We're hitting the button. Morning, everybody. We are on Daf Lamed Aleph, short Amud, and we're at the Mishnah. So Yoel got us about halfway through. We're going to finish the parak today, and we're on a bit of a digression. So the one of the Mishnayos, this is on, I think it's Chaf Ches Amud Aleph, it's talking about if a person is bringing a get, but the husband who sent him was very ill. Can we assume that he's alive because Ein Get La Farmisa would be a problem if he's dead? And that kind of launched onto a whole various amount of sugyas about, again, can we be mafresh truma with certain assumptions? And we talked about, all this cheskas chai, and that's really where we are now up to. Again, we're kind of in the middle of a digression that's involving trumas and maestros, but it all kind of started from this question of when you get directions from a Baal and he's sick, can you assume he's still alive to carry out the shlichus? So we are on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph by the Mishnah. So Haminiach Peiros Lios Mafresh Shalem Shumos and Maestros. So imagine you are not home right now, and you're on business, whatever it is, and you're gonna have stuff that's gonna need to you need to be masakin for Shumos and Maestros, and you have specific fruit at home that you designated, and you said when I'm on the road and I got tevel, I'll be mafresh the truma from fruit I have at home, and then I'll be able to eat the fruit while I'm on the road. That's kind of what you're trying to do. Or so again, hamniach peros dios mafresh and truma so maestros, or maos dios mafresh and maestro sheni. Same idea. You are somewhere on the road. There are coins at home. You've got produce that's maestro sheni. In theory, you got to either bring the stuff to Yerushalayim or be put in onto money. Can you be quoted onto the money that you don't have in your pocket, but you have it in your house? And the Mishnah says, so this is really that same idea. It was in the house at some point, the money, the produce, it was there. Now you're out of the house. Can you assume it's still there to enable you to be mafresh this stuff or not? You have to be choshesh that maybe something happened to it. Just as an FYI, Tosfos right here, maybe your kids ate it, maybe it's lost, maybe, by the way, totally random. I got to my car yesterday to come to Shachris. Someone broke into my car, but I was embarrassed for myself. They took nothing. Not my golf clubs. I had stuff in the car. They took nothing.
During Shachris?
No, it was overnight.
I wanted to change.
Yeah, whatever.
People don't have it anymore because
But just yesterday at the end of the blot, we actually learned a halacha that said that when you do trumas and maestros, you have to do it min hamukah. You generally have to do it with the fruit nearby. This has to do with concerns about tumah and stuff like that. So what is this person doing out on business? How is he even able to do this? Tosfos actually explains. This is Gibra Matzla Hamaniach Peros Sios Mafresh, so a really, really short one. But he explains that this must be Ba'arvei Shabbasos or Yom Tovim. He must be in a Shasad Chak or something like that, which is even enabling him to do this. But again, the halacha of the Mishnah is that if a person's away from his house and he wants to be mafresh using produce that he has at home, or he wants to do Meiser Sheni, he wants to be quoted onto money, but he doesn't have the money on him. He wants the money sitting in the house. He can b'chaska shein kayamin. He can do it. Now, what if he comes home and he realizes they're gone, right? So im avdu, let's say he comes home and he realizes this produce that I relied on or this money isn't there anymore. The kids ate it, they spent it, whatever it is. So harezda poshesh may ace le'ace divrei Reb Elazar. He does have to be concerned for this period of may ace le'ace. The Gemara is going to explain what that is, two different sheets of the Gemara, but there is a concern of may ace le'ace, and we'll see in the Gemara what that means. Different halacha. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shlosha prakim. Bodkin es hayayin. There are 3 times of the year that you got to check your wine. So what's going on over here is you've got wine at home, you've got barrels of wine, right? And not like our days where it's bottled, where you have barrels, and the wine over time can turn into vinegar. If it turns into vinegar, you can't use that wine to be trumas and maestros on your good wine because it's vinegar. You can't use vinegar to do trumas and maestros on your wine. So how often do you have to check your wine to make sure it hasn't gone bad? So Rabbi Yehuda says there are 3 periods of the year that you got to check. The kidum shel motzei hachag. This is the eastern wind that comes towards the end of Sukkot. The Gemara is going to explain. It's lav dafka. It's not necessarily Sukkot. It's the autumnal equinox, which I don't know what that means, but it's around that time of year. That's the first time. Behotzas smadar. This has to do with when grapes start to bud on the vines. And b'shas knisas mayim b'boser. This is another stage in the grape process when they kind of Bosar, I think, is when the grapes are a certain size, like Rashi is like a pool halavan, like a white bean, and there's moisture, and you can squeeze out the moisture. Again, it's just another time in the grape harvesting process. Again, these are 3 different times of the year that you have to at least check your wine to make sure it's still wine. To the extent you're going to use it to be mafresh, trumas, and maestros on other another wine. Okay.
Ah.
So again, the very first halacha of the Mishnah was if you're out of town, you can use produce that's in your house to be mafresh truma. But if you come home and you realize that it's gone, you have to be concerned me'es la'es. The Gemara says, "My me'es la'es." What does this mean? What does it mean that you have to be concerned me'es la'es? So Rav Yochanan Amar me'es la'es shel bedika. Right? When I come home and I see it's not there, I have to be concerned that it wasn't there for the previous 24-hour period. So if I'm out of my house, it depends when I was mafresh. If I did it day of, so I got to be concerned because that's within the 24-hour period of when I checked. But if I was gone for a week and I was mafresh on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I come home, a few days later, so then I'm good because I only have a 24-hour period from the time I discovered it was gone. And as long as I was mafresh beforehand, I'm okay. Rebbe Lazar ben Antignos Omer, Mishum Rebbe Lazar, Rabbi Yanai, on the page, Me'es le'es shel hanacha, total 180 of the last sheet. It says, no, once I put the money there and I know it was there, I have a 24-hour grace period to assume it's still there. But from that point till now, I have to be concerned. So if the money was there a month ago, then I only have a 24-hour grace period a month ago where I was able to be mafresh this truma. But to the extent last week I was away on business, then no, I have to basically redo the afresh. Now, obviously, if I ate the produce, then we're not talking about like onshin right now. We're just basically saying if I was mafresh truma, but I don't know, I didn't eat it for whatever reason, and now I'm home. Do I have to do something again? So yes, according to the second shita, my ace la'ace is only 24 hours after I knew where the produce was. So if I was mafresh after that, I'd have to redo it. So the Gemara has a kasha from our Mishnah. Again, the lashon of our Mishnah was hareza choshesh me'ace la'ace. That was the lashon. So the Mishnah says, so the Gemara says, Tanan im avdu hareza choshesh me'ace la'ace. So you have to be concerned kind of for a 24-hour period. So if you want to say that me'es la'es means the 24 hours, prior to when I discovered the issue, that's what it means. That I have to be choshesh for a 24-hour period. But if you want to say like the second shita, that it's 24 hours from the time when I knew where it was, meaning it could have been a month ago, hi me'es la'es. It doesn't really, the lashon of I have to be concerned for a 24-hour period isn't really right. It's more like I have to be concerned until the period that was 24 hours after I knew where it was. So the lashon of the Mishnah is not great according to the second shita, and the Gemara says kasha. I mean, you're right. That definitely is a kasha, but we'll move on. So this was the shita of Rab Elazar ben Shemuel. So the Gemara says Amar Rab Elazar. This is Rab Elazar the Amoras. Rab Elazar ben Pedas says about the shita of Rab Elazar in our Mishnah, Chalukan ulav chaveirav al Rab Elazar. We have another Mishnah somewhere where they clearly argued on this shita of Rab Elazar. So again, Rab Elazar's shita was, if I assumed there was produce somewhere, I now realize it wasn't, I have to be concerned for a period of me'es la'es, whatever that means, right? We had two different sheets of the Gemara. But here we have another Mishnah that clearly is cholek on the shita of Rab Elazar. It's not, this is a Mishnah in Kedushin. Apparently, it's the very first Mishnah of Nida, probably. Well, it's me is brought down there. The Mishnah in Mikvos, Mikvah shenimdad v'nimsa chaser. Let's say you have a mikvah and you then measure it and realize it's not 40 sa. So kol taharos shenasu al gabav lemafreya bein mishus hayachid bein mishus harabim timeos. So you got this mikvah. Everyone assumed it was good. All of a sudden you measure it. You're like, oh my God, it doesn't have 40 sa. Every single person that now did kalim went there, you got to redo it until, going back to the period when you knew it had 40 sa. Now, again, why this Mishnah doesn't say anything about me'es la'es. There's no grace period, right? Whatever me'es la'es means, this Mishnah clearly doesn't hold of it, right? So clearly, this Mishnah is cholik on Rab Elazar. Just an interesting point. The Mishnah speaks out, bein mishus hayacha, bein mishus harabim. What's it getting at there? So we've known from all these sugyas that normally a suffix tuma b'rishus harabim you could be more makel, a suffix tuma b'rishus hayachid you have to be more machmer. Why doesn't that apply over here? So Rashi speaks out. That's only when there's a suffix, whether something became tuma. Here, everything was tummy. You put the thing in the mikvah. The question is only, was the mikvah able to resolve the tumah? That's where we say that there's no difference between Rishus Hayachid or Sarabim. Either way, clearly this Mishnah argues on the sheet of Rab Elazar in our Mishnah that at least gave you this me'es la'es grace period. So the Gemara says, shita de chalukin. Yeah, Rab Elazar ben Pedas, what are you telling us? He had a shita. There's another Mishnah that clearly conflicts. Well, thank you. But yeah, obviously they argue. So the Gemara says, no, Mahu the same Amayla Mafreya. When this Mishnah in Mikvaos was saying that you have to be concerned the Mafreya, maybe it just meant Me'es Le'es, meaning it didn't speak it out, but it said you have to be concerned. But there was this grace period of Me'es Le'es, whatever that means. Kamash Malan that no, this Mishnah totally argues with Reb Elazar ben Shemua, right? Our Reb Elazar, and therefore it's just a machlokas Tana. Okay, so then we had the safe of our Mishnah where Rabbi Yehuda said there are 3 times of a year where you got to check. You got to check your wines, and from here on, it's really just I gotta tell some fascinating stories. So the first of the 3 time periods was the eastern wind at the time of Sukkot. So Bekidum Shalmoti Echag Shel Tufas. So the Gemara says again, this has to do with this eastern wind at the end of Sukkot, but it stopped when Sukkot is in the Tufa of Tishrei, meaning it's got to be in the what did I say the autumnal, that's the words I have written here, autumnal equinox. Sometimes Sukkot can be in the summer, and then it wouldn't be late enough in the year where this thing wouldn't apply.
Wait, Sukkot is not in the summer.
Why are you saying that?
Well,
Before other bet,
So-
the year before other bet, most of the time it's in East.
Yigal, fascinating. Top Tosfos on the page. Tosfos says just like Eddie, he might actually quote Eddie. He says, "In Tomar, but like Sukkot never happens like that." But he says he brings a Gemara from Sanhedrin, but he answers that it can. So you're both right. Yigal's right and Eddie's right. Everyone's right. But the truth is, Tosfos does ask the question. Apparently, Sukkot doesn't always happen, or very rarely happens in the summer. It always happens in no, I don't mean the month of Tishrei. I mean Kufas Tishrei. It's
Okay,
yeah.
no,
Clearly, it always happens in the month of Tishrei. That I'll agree with you. It never happens in Tammuz.
obviously,
Yeah.
but it could be, it'll be middle of September,
Again, I
late October.
again, but
Yeah,
Eddie,
October equinox is September 21st.
yeah, again, this is when this is when I remind everyone that I'm just the backup to the backup. And all right.
Yeah.
Bottom line, the point is, again, this is not a din in like Sukkot. It's in the autumnal equinox, which Sukkot generally happens to coincide. But again, as Eddie and Yigal and everyone's talking about, and again, Tosfos is already talking about this. I don't know exactly, but moving on. So Tanya, we have a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, begimel prakim mocher nesatua. There are 3 times that are opportune for if you're in the market of a tua seller. That's when you should be selling your tool. Nei hazara before the planting season, ubeshas hazara in the planting season, and ubeprosa pesach in the 15 days leading up to Pesach. Same idea. Shlosha prakim mocher nesayan. There are 3 times that are very opportune to sell wine. Prosa Pesach, Prosa Tzeres, Prosa Chag. Right before Yantiv, people need wine for for the shudos, whatever it is. That's a good time to be selling wine. Ushem, and when it comes to selling oil, Me'atzeres ve'elach. It's a good time to sell following Shavuos. So the Gemara says, I mean, Lamai Hilchasa. I mean, what are you just giving us like random business advice? Not only are you just randomly giving us business advice, it seems to be pretty obvious advice. If you're in the wine business, you're going to know that before Yantiv is your busy season, right? And say same thing with the Tua. For Pesach, you're going to want to sell, grain because people need matzah. Like this is all pretty obvious. So Amar Rabba ve'Isma Rav Papa. No, there is a halachic issue that we're dealing with here, which is l'shutmin. And the way Rashi explains is normally if you have a partner, you can't do large transactions without their consent. But these are times of the year where the business, it's known that the pricing is right. And this is right, where you can even go ahead and do something without your partner's consent. And Rashi even speaks out. And if for whatever reason prices go up even more after your partner can't have a complaint on you. He can't be like, you should have consulted with me. I knew that this year would be different. No, this is how it goes. And therefore you can even make these sales without buy-in from your partner. Mikan ve'elach mai. So it sounds like these were very specific times. What about like the days after, right? So Amarava kol yom pirkehu. Again, it's very unclear to me exactly what this means, but I think the way Art Scroll explained it was, it seems like, again, this was kind of the peak and it's only going to go downhill from here. So any day after that, if you can still kind of get the good pricing, go for it. You don't need to worry about necessarily your partner's consent. Okay, so we talked about the eastern wind and we're going to be focusing now a lot on this, the qualities of this eastern wind. So this is a pasuk in Sefer Yonah. So towards the end of Sefer Yonah, Hashem gives him this kikayon, right? Some sort of tree or something, the kikayon to Yonah, and he had shade and everything was wonderful. And then a worm comes and takes away the tree. And this is the context where this puzzle is coming in. So by Yehi Kizroach Hashemesh, by Iman Elokim Ruach Kadim Charishis. So the sun was, beating on him, and Hashem kind of designated this eastern wind. And the pasuk says Charishis. For whatever it's worth, the ArtScroll Tanakh translates Charishis as stifling. So it's kind of the stifling heat. My Charishis, but the Gemara says, what is it? What's Charishis? So I'm Rabbi Yehuda b'Shashim and Hasheves oset tlamim bayam. Charishis is more milashon like plowing. Yeah. So the wind is strong that it creates like furrows in the yam.
Where eastern wind coming from the east or the west or west to the east?
Again, back up to the backup. Eastern, that's coming from the east.
No, I would think eastern wind is coming from the east to the west, right? Yeah, okay. Right. Okay.
What is it?
No, right.
It's eastern wind and he's coming from.
It's
From the
Chicago,
east.
we don't use the moral
No,
meteorology, but I'm saying when you hear that word, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Wind is up the lake.
So Amarle Rabba, so Rabba says, so you're telling me that this wind would cause furrows in the water. It sounds like these stormy winds presumably would be cool air, but it sounds like in the story of Yonah that it was very hot air, and that's why he was so bothered by this wind. He said, Yonah, the sun was beating on his head and he was like feeling faint. So why would it be the stormy winds that presumably would bring in cold air? It sounds like it was hot air. So Ella Amar Rabba b'shasha mina sheves mishtekes kol ruchos mipaneh. That no, this eastern wind kind of counteracts all of the other winds. V'hainu d'chsiv, meaning there's cooler winds, and comes in the eastern wind and it kind of counteracts those and therefore creates this heat. V'hainu d'chsiv, this is a pasuk in Iyov. Asher begadecha chamim b'hashket eres midaram. Your clothing, I guess, is very warm when the southern winds are cooled or are quieted. Amar Rav Tachlipa bar Rav Chizda. What does this mean? Amar Rav Chizda. Masai begadecha chamim. When are your clothes warm? B'shashe hishket eretz midaram. When the southern winds, which I guess are cooler, when they are kind of counteracted. Because I guess when I'm not entirely sure how all this works, but when the southern wind is no longer, I guess that allows the eastern wind to control, and therefore it's very warm. So that's what it means in Eo when your clothing is very warm. Okay. Either way, yeah, maybe, yeah, I'm seeing. So Rav Huna v'Rav Chizda have a yachvi. So Rav Huna and Rav Chizda are sitting around, and Chalif va'azil Geniva alai, and then a man by the name of Geniva comes by, and we'll see in a second who this Geniva was. So Amar Chal Chabre. So one of the two, Rav Huna or Rav Chizda, said to the other, "Make a mikmei about Uriah, who should really stand up. He's a big Talmud Chacham, this Geniva." Amar Le'idoch. The other one responded, "Mikmei pal ga'a nekum." In front of this, we should get up for this guy. He's a Baal Machlokas, right? So either way, so Adahachi asa ihu legabai. So Geniva does come. So whether they stood or not, I don't know, but he comes, and Amar Lahu b'mayaski. So what are you guys dealing with and learning? So Amar Le Baruchos, we're talking about the winds, the eastern winds. So Amar Lahu achi Amar Rav Chanan bar Rava Amar Rav Dalid Ruchos minasheves b'chol yom. There are 4 winds that kind of blow every single day. Ruach tzfonis minasheves and kulam, and the northern wind blows every single day with them. Shalmale kain. If not for this northern wind, ein olam miskayim afilu sha'achas. The world wouldn't be able to stand even for a moment, or whatever it is. Exactly. Ruach Deromis, and the southern wind, Kasha Mi Kulam, is the harshest of all of them. Shalmale ben Nuts, Ma'amida. If not for Ben Nuts, Usam Malach, if not for him protecting us from this dangerous southern wind, Mechareves Kala Ulam Kulo Mipanash and Namar, a pasuk in Eov, again, Hami Binascha Ya'avar Nuts, Yafros Kinafav L'Teiman. So I think it's like a praising Hashem, like your understanding or your whatever, you're putting nuts in the right spot to kind of spread his wings, whatever it is, towards the south to kind of protect us from this southern wind. So I think it's worth taking a second. This Geniva is some conflicted individual. On the one hand, he's a huge Talmud Chacham. On the other hand, he's a Bar Palga. So it's fascinating. Apparently, this guy shows up throughout Shas, but most notably, he's a character that shows up in Gittin a few times. So we actually had him already on Daf Zayin Amid Aleph. So there was a story, this is in one of these Agadatas, where Mar Ukva comes to Rabbi Lazar and he says, Mar Ukva was a very powerful individual. And he came over to Rabbi Elazar and he says, "There's this guy that's bothering me. I really just want to like tell him most of the malchus." And Rabbi Elazar was like, "No, don't do that." And Markova was like, "No, he's really getting on my nerves." He's like, "No, just daven and whatever, and everything will be fine." And then that's what he did. And the Gemara says, "Hadavar yotimi pi Rabbi Elazar unshanuhu legeniva b'kolar." Geniva was put into prison. Rashi says he was put in shalshela shel barzel. Shenosin sham hamuchtavim lamalchus lahariga. He was literally sentenced to death. This Geniva. So that's kind of, I guess, the end of the story, right? Where he was literally sentenced to death. But throughout the Masechta, we kind of see he's this like random character that shows up in these stories. But that was this portion, today's portion of Geniva. Either way, Rava Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, so kind of another story. Rava and Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak were Habu Yasvi. They are sitting together, and have a Chalifa Adil Rav Nachman bar Yaakov, and all of a sudden Rav Nachman bar Yaakov comes. The Yasib Begu Harka Dedava. He's being like pushed or whatever in this golden carriage. Uparis aleh sarbala dekarti, and the carriage is covered with this bluish greenish, sheet. The point is he's traveling in style, like some sort of, serious VIP. So Rava Rava goes over to greet him, and Nachman bar Yitzchak lo azal agave, and if Nachman bar Yitzchak doesn't go to greet him, Amar, and he said to himself, Dilma inchi de Reish Galusin. This guy's some VIP. He's probably with the Reish Galus's office. Rava tzarich I know tzarich lu. Rava, needs him. Rava wants to get in his good graces. I'm not as concerned. But Rav Nachman bar Yaakov, when he realized that it was Rav Nachman bar Yaakov that was in the carriage, so azal lagaveh. So then, of course, he came over to and Gully Ladare, Rav Nachman bar Yaakov in this carriage was very warm, and he rolled up his sleeves. And Amar Shadya Nashiv, like the eastern wind or one of these winds is awful, and that's why it's so warm. That was the whole point of the story. Talk about how winds can be very warm. One more interesting point before we just finish the parak, and that is Rashi. We have this weird internal dialogue from Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. He's like, Rava needs the Reish Galusa. I don't need the Reish Galusa. The way Rashi explains is that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was the son-in-law to the actual Reish Galusa. So he's like, here's some guy, some senator. My father-in-law is like literally the governor. What do I care to talk to this senator? But Tosfos, this long Tosfos over here, is really bothered by Rashi, because Rashi says, how do I know that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was the son-in-law to the Reish Galusa? Because there's the Gemara in Chulin that said that Rav Nachman was married to Alta, who was the daughter of the Reish Galusa. But Tosfos says it doesn't say Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, it just says Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman is an Amora throughout Shas. He's a very common quoted Amora. Mm-hmm. And Tosfos says, that's not Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, that's Rav Nachman bar Yaakov. That's the guy from our story that was in the carriage, which of course makes sense. That's why he's in the carriage. So it's fascinating. There's this big machlokas. Rashi tells us, not only how do you understand the story, Tosfos says, so why did Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak not want to meet with him? Yeah, he just was very wealthy. He didn't care to meet with the Reish Galusa. But the point is, it's a fascinating machlokas. Rashi tells us, the Rav Nachman in Shas, the Rav Nachman, was Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, or was Rav Nachman bar Yaakov? Seems to be a machlokas right here, Rashi and Tosfos. Either way, Amar Rav, we'll just finish up
It's Rav Nachman bar Yaakov.
That's what Tosfos says. Rashi clearly disagrees. He thinks it's Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, which is just, I don't know. Either way, so Amar Rava says, Hachi Amar Rav, that when it comes to this eastern wind, Isha ma pelasbo, unfortunately, a woman can miscarry. Shmuel Amar afilu margula shabiyam markevesbo. Shmuel said that this eastern wind can cause even a pearl in the sea to become rots. And Rav Yochanan Amar afilu shepchazera shemei isha misrachasbo, that a shepchazera in a woman can become putrefied. And Amar Nachman bar Yitzchak, this is clearly Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Ushlashta Mikra Echad Darshu. All of them really learned this all out from the same pasuk. There's a pasuk in Hosea. It's talking about Shevet Ephraim, and it's some sort of klala. So it says, Kihu bein Achim Yafri, that Ephraim, he was one of the brothers that was kind of flourishing. But Yavo Kadim Ruach Hashem in Midbar, the Ruach Kadim is going to come from the Midbar, Olavi Vosh Makaro, it's going to dry out the spring. And the pasuk continues, Yevosh Makoro, Yecharav Mayano, it's going to dry out the springs, and Hu Yishta Otzar Kol Kli Chanda. And all the storehouses are also going to go bad. So the Gemara says, Yevosh Makoro, when the pasuk says that it's going to dry up the fountains or whatever, Zu Makoro Shal Isha. That's the fountain, that's kind of saying she's going to miscarry. The Echarav Mayano, when the pasuk says that springs will be destroyed, says Shepchazera Shemei Isha. That's Shepchazera in a woman. And Hu Yishta Otzar, and these are going to plunder all the storehouses. Kol kli chemda zu margala shebiyam. This is the pearl in the sea. Amar Rabba, Ede Surya who did Ikra. There were Ede Surya who helped me be medayik this pasuk. My kihuben achim yafrish. The beginning of the pasuk said that, referring to Shevet Ephraim, that he flourished among the brothers. So Amar Rabba afilu shufta be kufina demara rafia. That even a handle of a hoe, I guess it's in like a certain cavity. The point is that they're clearly together, like brothers. Rafia, the eastern wind will come and will loosen this handle of the hoe. Rabbi Yosef Amar afilu sikta bedafna rafia. Even a peg in a wall. Again, normally it's closely together like brothers. Rafia, the eastern wind will come and will loosen it up. And Rabbi Yaakov Omer afilu kanya bekupsa. Even a reed in a basket, which again is tightly woven together. Rafia will become loosened.
Wow.